Start.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
So we call this recess back into session. And we'll continue with our analysis of the numbers. Mr. Long.
Do you want to do recognition of public first?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I forgot we were going to do that.
Hello.
Hello. And if you could, it's really hard to hear the citizens' comments on this out. Well, if you stand over here, they'll hear you really well.
All right. Ladies and
Thank you.
gentlemen, my name is Joe Matthews. I live at 605 Harris Lane in Gallatin, Tennessee. Been a resident of Sumner County for 52 years. Been law enforcement for 37 years, serving Sumner County as a whole. Different agencies, but 37 years. And I've had the pleasure of serving the citizens of the 4th District as a County Commissioner of District 4 for 8 years in that tenure also. What y'all have before you, Sheriff Weatherford. Again, I'm talking as a citizen on my behalf and the behalf of some other employees as citizens. What you have before you is an opportunity that doesn't come around very often. I wish we would have had an opportunity like this when I was county commissioner in order to upgrade the salaries and be competitive with the surrounding counties and agencies where people are leaving left and right, going everywhere. I say that to say the $3.6 million the sheriff has bent over backwards, in my opinion, over the years since he's been elected at that constitutional office to work with the county commission. Made compromises, great compromises, in my opinion, from time to time in order to meet budgetary items and things that would not only benefit his organization, not as much, but the citizen. He's been an avid watcher of money, and if you look back, a lot of his salary stuff, but if you look back, he has done his part as county commissions asked each department head to do to turn funds back in, and he has done that. He has brought you a proposal. He felt very strongly about that, in my opinion, again, just from what I see. And his ask is not unreasonable. His ask is proper. His ask is trying to run, again, his agency that he is responsible for and what he needs in order to properly run it. I say all that. I say that the money that unfortunately has come, the state of Tennessee has decided to do this as a result, a direct result of the school shootings and the other crime that's being committed. There's because of the wording on the paperwork, there's a concern of, well, if it goes away, if it goes away. Take a look at state of Tennessee history and the way it's run. They've been a conservative state. They have millions upon millions of dollars in the rainy day fund reserves. They have brought sports industries into the state, into the local metro area, and that means tax dollars coming in. They've looked at it, and this is something that the state has decided to do to take action in order to try to prevent or stop these school shootings. Anybody in their right mind in today's world would think that they would take that funding away. It would be political suicide for anybody that votes for it. End of story. That is a hard, fast thing, a step, one of the things that they're going to do, the curb, and they will continue to do so. But out of proper budgetary things, looking at it, it doesn't hurt to look, as y'all are doing. We appreciate that. You do your due diligence as a county commissioner and as a body, and that is great. But at the end of the day, whenever things done, say the concern that the money goes away, $3.6 million, and next year should be $4,125,000 based on the 5 that y'all have did approved and the 2 more schools that are coming on. Additional $525,000 next year. But should it go away? They're saying it's a tax increase. I can disagree with that. Out of the plain statement of, you said you've got $10 million that you've been paying in the deficit, and it's coming, that deficit is done, so now you got an additional $10 million. Worst case scenario, you take $3.6 million out of the $10 million. You still got the millions to do other things with on that if you're worried about a tax increase. I don't see that being a problem, personally, in my opinion. And as you go on, I would request that the proper thing to do is do what the sheriff is asking in order to run his organization. You can take this opportunity to do that, to bring people up to a certain level. Then next year, when the state is going to continue the money, and you do have that 10 million, you can take a small portion of that 10 million and do your step increases or whatever pay plan that is needed in order to stay competitive and in order to try to keep employees. Today, especially the young people, they're about money. That's it. How much money are you going to pay me to come to work? And right now, we're drastically, even after when the commissioner said a 17% increase, where we took the 15% COVID hazardous fund and we took the 2% cost of living, 17%, and we're still so far down on the totem pole in relationship to other counties now and what's being paid. We paid for a pay study to be done. Part of that pay study was implemented and a lot of it was not. So again, just taking your time to reiterate, state the facts as I see them as a citizen of Sumner County. Like I said, and if we ever get to a tax increase, my experience has showed if you actually show the people where the money's going and why you need it, the majority of the people say fine, especially when you talk about emergency services because of the days and times. And being a law enforcement officer in today's world, it's not like it used to be. It's more dangerous. We're losing officers all across the country on a daily basis at times. So this is something that we can do in order to keep qualified individuals here and to draw qualified individuals from other agencies that may be unhappy with theirs. But I appreciate your time. Thank you for your time because I know it's valuable, and appreciate the hard work that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hallmiller?
Hi, I'm Charlene Amiller. I live at 143 Rulin Circle, Huntersville, Tennessee 37075. And I wanted to say that this has probably been the most productive committee I've witnessed, and I haven't watched all of them, but that I've seen in the past year. So that's great. And I think that what you guys do that's so beneficial for the sheriff's department or any department that you guys would do is like you're doing the administrative aspect that they don't have the wherewithal, like they don't have the labor, they don't have the experience to do of like doing the data requests to get all the data from the competing organizations, to, for lack of a better word, whenever you're just thinking about it, getting all that information, putting it in a spreadsheet and looking at it like that in order to ascertain where are we now in conjunction with others. And I think it's really great that you've brought in a subject matter expert from the sheriff's office to like say, well, does this make sense or does this not make sense? And I'm going to make a little segue so I don't forget. One of the things that I noticed last time is that there was concern on the deputies, on the sergeant's level, that they were making more than the other people. And I also noticed throughout the meeting that you guys recognize that there may be factors that you're not familiar with in there. I'm wondering if some of the other department or some of the other agencies that you're comparing to are maybe promoted younger with less experience in order to give their people a pay raise, and so they may be lower in fair market value, but they may not be comparable in experience to our sergeants. And those are the kinds of things that, like, I mean, you can spend, and you gotta, what are the cost-benefit analysis of how many hours you're going to spend on this, because as you guys already acknowledged, no matter how much time you spend on it, it's a moving target because it's a market, and like somebody else is going to change, like Wilson County's doing their study, so they're going to change. And so you're never going to get it perfect because it's always going to be a living, breathing object. So recognize that maybe if there is difference, why is there a difference, and we may not know what that difference is. I'm going to say all this to say that, like, I think that you guys are doing an excellent value-added service. I mean, like, really, truly a value-added service. And it's not, I know it's not up to this committee and it's up to the commission, but I would like to encourage you guys to consider that instead of like doing a memorandum of understanding, Sheriff Weatherford's, whatever you guys do here today, it may look great on a spreadsheet, but whenever you put in practice, there could be unintended consequences of something that you may not know. And like Sheriff Weatherford needs that flexibility to be able to adjust things as he can and whatnot. So I think while it's been discussed that Sheriff Weatherford would prefer to do like just an equal think maybe some of that was the inherent difficulty in trying to get all this data to see where it would need to be proportional or whatnot. But the other aspect of it is that like he does need to be able to have the flexibility. He is the one who's held accountable to the citizens in election time. And I want to just bring this back into an analogy in the accounting world. The FASB, I don't know what they call themselves these days, but whoever's making the accounting rules, they say this is guidance, this is what you do, but they don't force companies to do one way or another because they recognize that every company is different and that every company is going to need to do something maybe that is profitable for their own investors or whatnot, and like that they can't foresee every opportunity and every risk, and they can't put that in a rule. Like you're doing all you can, and then just let go and let God, and like say we put that in the resolution. Whereas the sheriff's department was losing money, whereas we got a windfall of money from the state on new money, and then whereas we did this study, we got all and then put in the counties of the information that you got, and this is what we've considered, and we think this would be good, but we recognize that things may need to be changed, and like. Thank you so much for your work. And I think that anybody who does take the time to watch these videos would be hard pressed to say that there's not a lot of good work happening here. And I'm sure that Sheriff Weatherford will notice that, recognize that. But I think that it's sometimes more respectful to say, hey, here's all the stuff that we've done. We hope it helps you make a great decision. That's just what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
You got it, Mr. Bethany? You want me to go ahead and start where we're kind of at?
Yes.
Can I ask a question? Are we running it informal like we did last time? We
Yeah.
just pop in when we have questions?
We are,
Can I ask for one thing?
yes, let's talk about the,
Okay, what we're gonna do, we had a lot of informal discussions. It's really went to comparative, but not really to a motion. So if we're following Robert Rules of Order, it would be the motion and anything pertinent by the most. So what we're gonna do, because we're like title staff, so I can't.
yeah, we're not
So
typing
what
it
I'll
up
do,
for the
what we do,
minute
we'll
taker.
stop with
Okay.
Bethany when we'll make the motion, and then the motion maker tell anything that's pertinent. If it's okay with you guys, anybody that's voting for it, tell anything that's pertinent, and we will try to get those portions in the minute.
No.
Because a lot of our discussions went up and down and over, and just trying to make sure we're making sense. But when you make something that's important, like if you want to disclaim on something, then we need to just get that in the motion if the chairman's okay with that.
I am,
Otherwise, I'll have to bring another person.
especially since I volunteered at a subcommittee last week as the minute taker. I'm more than willing to.
And budget, we way overshoot Robert Rules of Order because there's so many times over the years, there's just so many questions that come back up. But this one, I think we can handle it without more staff. The motion maker and the voters making anything they think is pertinent to the motion, and it will get everything everybody needs in there, if that's okay with everybody else.
I'm good
I'm
with
good
that.
Because I really don't want to pull another.
I just wanted to know how we were.
I don't want to pull another one out of payroll
Yeah.
or anything.
No,
because
no,
they all
I'm
have
good with
jobs
this.
and
No, let's
we're
do
running
this.
overtime.
All right, and then if we could step back into where we were,
Well,
and I do want to step right in, but I want to,
but let's just show you the
Fresh.
cost first and hit the cost, Beth, because I've really done a couple of things here. It'll help go to the very bottom. Does it have the panes frozen away? We can see what we're looking. Can you freeze the panes? Sorry.
so you
We printed
reformatted
it up. We
I know
put
you did.
in
I was not gonna say
formulas to make sure it was
prettied it up.
accurate.
You
All kind of stuff.
reformatted it.
So I spent a lot of work on it, but the only thing I'm questionable, every year we send to the sheriff's department to compare your start date for longevity. These are the ones we use. We're not had any issues with people's budgeting and longevity, so we're assuming these are correct. So these are the dates. Everything in here is based on your anniversary date. So you become a 2-year employee on your anniversary date. You become a 1-year employee on your anniversary date. But nobody's below one, so you know you've got an anniversary the year of budgeting. That's what's in here right now, and my only reservation on that is not as much as the jail about the TCI, but as far as your patrol officers, the ones that become post-certified, we're just using years of service. So if I was a 10-year deputy and you brought somebody from somewhere else that was never post-certified and gave them 2, that would be my only angst with the whole way we're doing it. That's my only spew from my end, in my opinion. And I don't know, and Eric may not see it that way because he's actually a post-certified officer.
Well, say your concern one more time.
Well, like in other words, if I had 2 10-year peoples, okay,
Mhm.
2 10-year deputies, okay, Deputy A's been with the county 10 years and been post-certified. Though Deputy B was in the jail. He finally decided to get post-certified. You moved him over, he's only been post for 5. They're gonna make pretty much the same. If I was the 10-year deputy, I may take a little angst on that. But if I was the jailer and I got no benefit, I would take some angst on that. So I'm not sure there's a good solution, but I will give that reservation that I have, and I don't know if you guys have the same reservation.
And I'll step into that too. I'm going to be recommending to the budget committee and to the committee at large that we take a look at this issue across the county. As far as, I really like how clean Rutherford's is with them looking at addressing that specific and many other issues. And I've spoken to a couple of the other departments.
And I did pull some data from the other offices when we were doing it, like on the maintenance, for instance. The maintenance for the sheriff's department's high compared to other counties, it's high compared to other counties. I went and pulled the maintenance, and I also pulled the mechanics to make sure our mechanics in the sheriff's department significantly higher than the rest of them. So and it looks like the clerical's the same way. So, and I think it's nothing by design. I think what happened was the ARPA, when it was put on everybody at 15%, I think it drove them up a little bit. Because they don't look huge, but they look 10 to 15% at least above, so I think ARPA drove that. It didn't drive the deputies because the deputies were on the street, and so it didn't accomplish it there, but I think it overshot some of those. And it's, as I'm saying, everything's a moving target, we're all just working on it, so not to say anything, nobody.
And again, our goal here is to stop the bleed and to get people, but one other thing I would like at the end of this, 2 things I'd like to address is time for today. Do we have time constraints?
Beth has to leave at 1:30, but I've got another employee that'll come down.
We're gonna stay all day.
And I think with these formulas, if you spend any more than 3 hours on this, where we're at right now, I think we're really just not moving or progressing.
Okay. And the other item I'd like to add to the end of this is I would like to understand clearly overtime in the sheriff's office, because that is a salary cost.
Jimmy talk about it right now, it's pretty
Well,
simple. The sheriff's a tiny bit different than everybody else. The sheriff is on what you call, basically, if they're a certified officer, a tour of duty. It's a 28-day cycle. Instead of 160, it's 171.
I think it's 172.
72.
Don't quote me.
It's based on wage and hours, so they don't get paid overtime or time and a half for some of those hours because they're on a tour of duty. But the thing is, our sheriff's department, by and large, lets people earn comp time or do overtime. But to be fair, all throughout the county, we've got tons of exempt employees, and we let them earn overtime and comp time. There's very few that don't. Me, Eric, Steve, the county engineer, and the assistant administrator of elections, and department heads. That's the only one. If you're a department head, no comp, no overtime. And those other employees, which I'm a department head, so the only others besides department heads would be your, staff attorney and your engineer. When you go to the sheriff's department, some sheriff's departments let lieutenants be exempt or not because they're more administrative, but your sergeants, by and large, everywhere that we can see, and even if you look at wage and hour generally, they are hourly employees. So there is a little bit more that we do push our people in the county by exemption, but over time, it's kind of stayed that way because on average, the county salaries have been lower than some of your other surrounding counties with the cost.
And I understand. I was shocked just this week to find out I think they're raising that to 55 something.
Oh, for the exemption limits, yes.
Yeah, so I understand that. Can we get a list for budget of the list of true exempt employees?
Well, right now, this is
The list that you just told me, if we could hand that to the budget.
They kind of vary, and we've never had HR here. We have finance performing that function, and then we brought it back in because it's worked better. But we haven't done things which I've complained for years, like showing exempt versus non-exempt, because we err on the because you've never got sued
Then
for
let's
paying
not
somebody
talk
overtime.
about exempt and not. Just give us a list of who does not get paid overtime. If you
Okay.
could give that to the budget committee, because that's part of this
that's
whole
pretty-
picture.
That's pretty easy. I just named them department.
You did,
heads
and all I'm
those
asking you is to formalize that in a list for them,
Okay.
so that I don't have to go
And there's
write it
even
down and then
some-
come back to you and double check it.
Right. That's. But I can go ahead and get Bethany to get somebody list.
Yeah,
of
so
that.
that's a component. The other thing is,
But let me finish something to make sure it is pertinent to your discussion right now. When we did do the salary survey, one of my requests was that there was job descriptions, and the job descriptions told exempt and non-exempt from that group. Those, and I had to send an email, Jessica's not here, but there was actually an email I had sent to them, and they're supposed to be in the next week or two supplying the rest of those job descriptions.
is that everyone?
that's everybody that's a different type of position, so it'd be all, a deputy, there would be one because deputies are pretty close, certain sergeants would have the same one. So it wouldn't be every single employee has one, but every single unique position should have one.
So, and we're addressing specifically the sheriff's department in this. Have you sent this out to all account? I'm just trying to, you said you sent out this request for job description.
We did it through the consultant, they're supposed to have done them for the
Oh,
whole time.
when we did it back in the
They
day,
sent
not
some
right
of them to
now.
legal already, they're supposed to be sending us the copy because they should have went there, but my thing, they haven't got the sheriff's department done, I believe EMS and maybe highway. There's a couple they're not finished with right now. So that's where we're at. If they finish some of them, send them forward, I think risk management has a copy, and, which we actually did over payroll, but the thing is right now, why it hasn't been, and that's been one of my complaints for years, but why it's not so pressing is the county has been erring very significantly to pay you overtime if it's due or not. So under wage and hour, you will not get sued for paying you overtime.
I want to pay everybody.
But
I just need to
if we do the
understand.
other direction, then we've got, liability there.
Oh,
And if it's willful, significant liability.
I'm
So mine, even before we even visit overtime or not, I think, two things would probably need to be visited. One, to make sure these job descriptions are 100% true on exempt versus non, and we're treating them that way, exempt versus non. And then number two, if you're gonna take away somebody's overtime, we do need to make sure they're being paid market.
yes.
100% market.
I
If they're
completely.
being paid below market, but it's being made up of a little overtime, we take the overtime away and save some dollars, you're gonna potentially lose good employees there.
Exactly. And on that, back to where we're talking about the comparison in the county, when the Department of Labor looks at the county, we are one employer. So if we have discrepancies, that's why I'm looking at the Rutherford model, because if we have discrepancies, then we have a problem, because we are one employer.
That was one of my complaints too, and that's one of the reasons when we did the job survey, we were looking at that because libraries, for instance, there was significant pay differences
Between libraries.
And there may be difference, like if you think of director Hendersonville versus Portland, a lot more work, a lot more people, that makes sense. But we were looking at librarian to librarian was significantly the
I
same
saw those
amount.
too, yeah.
People had money, so they would pay as much as they could. Be here would do something different over time, so we had these salaries like that. We try to equalize those to make sure people were being treated fairly across the board. It wasn't an issue of discrimination, it was an issue of each one had their own little sub-department and they had the same employees, so they kind of just, the department pool.
Yeah.
So that is an issue that was one of my concerns too. We do have pay disparities.
So that is one of the reasons that I'm looking at suggesting to the whole commission that we come up with a model like Rutherford has, because we are one employer. I've gotten that explained to me very clearly now.
Several of them have that. Every one that we
Yeah.
put up here, other than, have one's very similar to Rutherford. That's why we're gonna look how yours changes compared to Rutherford, because several things make factors that we could not see the other day that you can now see where you're at. I mean, we've kind of summarized
And
that
then
here.
the one other piece before you get started, and I'm sorry, I just wanted to clear up these things, because these are things that I feel it's important for the future committees and the full commission to understand, is what is our total overtime cost? That's a number I don't think you have with you, but I want to gather it up at a
We just
later
gotta
time.
print the overtime line item off the system upstairs.
So that we can, because it's hard to say we're going to cover salaries, but we also know that we have overtime that we're covering too. So when we're budgeting, we need to look at the
Let's
full.
talk about your biggest group of overtime. It is your EMS. Your EMS employees
Right.
are not exempt and they're
understand.
not on a tour, so anything that is hours worked means, you could kick out vacation and sick, but physical hours in the office has to be paid at 1.5 times the rate on a 7-day period. They're not on a tour of duty, so theirs is there, so most of theirs
yes.
is required. They get paid some extra overtime for like working
Perhaps.
holidays and certain things that are incentives to keep employees compared to other counties, but even if we minus those back, by and large, most of that overtime is gonna remain unless you add employees. And then the same thing, you've gotta take those marks, because there's two things, overtime is time and a half, but your employee has a base cost for health and dental. So if we take another employee in, we gotta figure out if we're getting rid
Yeah,
of
I
enough.
understand.
At the
But
same
if-
time, if everybody else is giving overtime, we may cause
If we
turnover
move them
issues.
over to another day of conversation, I'm just looking at the total cost in the sheriff's office. When we look at the bucket
The
that.
sheriff doesn't use a whole lot of overtime at all.
Good.
There's very little, they comp it out, they're very good at it. They
I
got
just
for
want
years.
to.
It's so minute,
That we have the full picture.
other than one thing, and it's the jail, and it's because they've got significant amount of vacancies. But if you go back to their patrol division, where they're pretty well staffed, they're really good at keeping their hours. I mean, they're very little overtime, and you guys.
We do use very little overtime, especially on the certified side of the house. That's because we give comp time. However, comp time, we have to give back, and I've had this conversation with Eric Sittler several times. It's almost at the mercy of the employee. They walk in on Tuesday and say, hey, I want to take 8 hours comp time today. Unless we can show a genuine detriment to the department, we have to give it to them. So that creates a shortage on the road. See what I'm saying? So now we're not providing services because we have to give this comp time back. It would be much better for our organization if we had a set overtime line item budget. You know, a guy goes to court for 6 hours, because that's the unfortunate part of our line of work. They work from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. They arrest criminals and take them to jail, keep the public safe.
And then they're off all day at the court.
And so there's two sides of the coin, right? I understand the accounting side, but in the application side, for us, we really do need an overtime line. We
Y'all
to be
need
able
more
to
time
pay
to
some-
sleep.
Yes.
Comp only exists in government, and the thing is you have to be reasonable accommodation to let them use the comp, so we can't give you comp and then make it hard to use. It makes an issue. Plus, they've got to be an understanding with the employees, which you've got in your personnel policy. So there's got to be an understanding between the county and the employee. We've got to reasonably accommodate to let them to use it, and it has to be earned at 1 1/2 time rate, just like overtime. So you can't use comp time to short your employee. So if the employee would have earned overtime rate, then he earns an hour and a half of comp time, period. That's what has to, that's where your system does it, set up
Yeah.
like.
And ours is on the 28-day, not the 7-day like EMS, because we do fall under that category under the FLSA. So the overtime, I would still say would fall under that category, but it would be much easier for me to manage the organization if we could just, hey, this guy got 16 hours overtime this month in court, pay him 16 hours, move on about our day. Now, it doesn't totally mitigate, but it reduces the need for additional manning to fill that hole. See what I'm saying?
And so that's in patrol. When I look at corrections and I see all of those vacant positions, that's what brings me to the point that I wonder about how much overtime you're using to fill those positions. And the mayor sent that report, that inspection report, and it was very summarized. It just said the ratio was off. I have no idea what the ratio is and how those vacant positions, how you're filling them with overtime. That's what brought me to this question. So I just wanted to look at that later, and we'll get that overtime.
We circle back over here to where we're.
Thank you.
We
Sorry
are,
for that.
We're at 3.4 million, which is within the numbers, but I see significant things we need to look at still, let's just say that. But right now, there's two things we got here. If you look at line 1, the 2024 rate, that's inclusive of two things, your base rate and ARP only. Now, the longevity was taken out, so we reworked it all to get that out. So it's no longer a play, so that's your difference. So when you come in here and your cost, when we come over here and you go, that's the cost between the difference between those two lines, okay? That's the benefit, so it gets you over here to subtotal 2.248 million. But ARPA funds were used to make this original base rate. So we're really, if we kick them up to here, the true cost to get it from where you're currently at to these rates is actually inclusive of that much ARPA plus its benefits that were budgeted, so it would make that 3.048 million. And then your new SROs were budgeted at 345,260 to account for, where's this new SROs? Did we add on there?
They're right here.
But where did we add for their adjustments on their salaries? It was on the old table. There should have been those new SROs up there too, because they got a salary difference. Yeah, I had it added on the old, we reworked that table, they not gonna pull back. So anyway, anything that we adjust also, you're gonna want to adjust your new SROs.
We just have this.
Right, but I'm saying those are 5 positions, so if we're starting them at, I don't know, we make up a number, 2575, and it should be 2662, we gotta come up with that money too, so we'll add that on there. Which, it'll be immaterial, but I just noticed that's not on there anymore, we're moving it around, but that's your cost sheet, so it'll be significantly correct
And
if all of our years of service are correct.
If I can just ask you, so I got this right. G
Okay.
has ARPA in it. That's
ARPA and base, yes ma'am.
ARPA and base. Okay, I'm good.
The next row over is what was
I got it.
recommended. Okay, the next is your annualized cost. So to keep them, the folks at that rate, without that ARPA that's gonna disappear, it's gonna take $3 million. With 3.048 and 3, so you're getting pretty close to the 3.6. And the things, if you use all that, and then we go back and say, the sheriff says, hey, we do wanna pick up some post-certification, then there's gonna be a lot of money for it at this rate. or if everybody comes in, because I've received at least one email about, from the commissioner about, a salary scale. I don't know, that's kind of beyond this, but that was one of their requests. So let's go back to the very first thing, and this is kind of, hit the comparison, let's go over it real quick. This is your comparison, okay? Sumner, Montgomery, Robertson, Rutherford, Wilson, Williamson, coming back through based on number of hours. If you look at the sheriff's department, just the regular budget, we would be 56,538 compared to the rest of them. So it would actually make us the highest in the area. And I'm not saying that's good or bad, but we may want to leave it that way and look at the risers to sergeant, because your problem is getting patrol officers in. If you start with a high patrol, but your sergeant don't get quite as much money, is my thought process, it'll pull you more patrol officers in. And then your jailers are the same way, but we accounted for that a lot by moving the 1% across, but we really didn't look at the risers. Go on and click it too, and this will make it much easier for Eric and Terry. I'm sorry, the sheriff's, the table, the one right beside it. Go. This is all those rates that you guys have summarized yesterday, based on two things go down. Okay. If you look, here's where we're at. Okay. Sumner, we're using 2%. Let's get that compared to other counties. This is other counties first. Let's show you deputies, and we did deputies and sergeants, SOS, so they're pretty consistent in their system to make sure they work, because that was a question yesterday, these dollar raises. Doesn't appear to be the case. If you go up and compare Sumner, we're at 102, almost everybody except for Robertson. They almost double, consistent of what their the rises between steps are going. Honestly, unless they've got a 6% growth rate with cost of living, I don't know if they can support funding that long term without additional taxes. Everybody else is pretty much running it too. So if we start at a higher rate and do 2, we'll stay higher with patrols, but we may want to look at the sergeants, go down to the jailers. The jailers, we started out the highest to get them in, but we used 1 and everybody else is 2, so it's going to equalize over time. I think that's probably our best move. So I think those are good. I think the only issues that I'm really seeing myself is if we go on up, there's this over here is in red because you've got that captain administrator, that's a here. This is Sumner's change between like a patrol and a sergeant, and these are your averages going across. Now we based almost, Gallatin was one of the highest, we almost based their salary on Gallatin. If you look at Gallatin, their rise between a patrol and a sergeant is 115%, and we're at 121. And so for me on my end, what I would see, because we're starting higher than any of them, going from, and I don't know how you guys feel, it's just I think we should probably change it from a patrol officer to a sergeant at 115% to overcome, starting with a higher salary on a patrol officer. Because if you're still getting a 15% raise and you're starting with a higher base, which is where we're having the problems. But that's just my thought process, but I mean, Eric may have a totally different one, or Terry.
I do have a different one, and only because I called people in the Gallatin administration,
Okay.
and they used this budget scale to really get feet in the door at the patrol level.
What about the sergeant level?
They're attacking that during budget cycle.
Well, see, my thing
So
is
that's
if we
coming.
look at, go across. Okay, so if you look at that, then the other next highest one was Robert, they were 116. So what I'm saying is mine is right now, because we are even higher than Gallatin, I would say, and I'm glad you asked them that, because it does kind of put them back, but we're still, based, we're the highest, and the second highest is Robertson, and they're still at a 116 to sergeant.
And so, I mean,
My thing is to leave your patrol officer the highest, because I think that's where everybody wants to push. But I'm saying there's 2 ways to come over with a higher starting rate if we want to come. One is like the jail, we start super high comparatively, we go down to the 1% and drop the rates, and you're still going to end up with good numbers, you're really pushing it up to the end. The other one, I would prefer on patrol not to decrease it going this direction, because you're having problems with several year officers up to 10 years. So my other ways to overcome it is to go between your next promotion.
I agree with that, but how does that look in application with our
Existing people?
existing people, right? So I understand our new people would go to the scale.
Put it, let's go change the formulas where I've got them to 115 temporary, and then we can go look at the cost sheet.
Okay.
Pull some of your sergeants and see what it does to, if they get a raise or if they stay flat. It's kind of a quick, and then we can.
And then the other thing is where I'm saying that I'd like to look at the whole county, we can address in budget. I mean, this is,
Change that to 1.15.
I guess my main concern here is I don't want this to be implemented and them lose money. Do you see what I'm saying?
You mean lose people?
Well, no, I mean I don't want the
Oh, you
sergeant.
mean people's gonna be making less for your sergeants? Oh, it'll be
Correct.
more than it is now. I'll
Okay,
look at that.
that's-
But we'll go look
That's
at
it.
it.
Right.
Because your sergeants, and this copy that cross 115 already. Okay, now go down to your cost sheet and find some of his patrol sergeants and see what they look like. Because they're all together. They're out of order. It's like Sergeant 1, 2, and 3 because we have sergeants together, but then they're by years of service.
And by the band, yeah.
Right. So we can do it one way or the other, but not both. And we want to leave those numbers on them because we identify them back to their individual salaries and things. So keep going on. What's the rest of it? Is that all the sergeants? So that you're correct, Eric. It's going to make them. Boy, you're almost exactly where their sergeants are at. Maybe one of them, we need to hire 115. So the 2024 rate with ARPA would be that our recommended would be slightly below. Because it has to show a positive. Right there.
Yeah.
And the thing's not to give them positive, things to keep them in market. So let's go back and, I hate that other sheet. It's hit on those tabs. We can unhide that market sheet. We were kind of basing them on steps up and down. Left click and unhide that sheet where we're showing our, I think we called it steps. There you go, just unhide steps. Try to make it simple sometimes. Let's look at what the others. Shows what going down to the sergeants.
This is an amazing amount of work, thank you.
I tried to get them back together and cleared up, but I kind of was rushing, to be honest. So our sergeants on step 1, if we used, that's true. What does their step 3s look like compared to ours?
We don't have any.
I mean, I'm sorry, 4. So we're currently 3604. See, we're hiring anybody, that's why right now, Eric. Your sergeants already make more than anybody else's, even with Gallatin's adjustments.
So
Ren Robertson and all of them. So right now, mine is kind of where I'm staying, is 115, because your sergeants are already paid above market on average. Your patrol officers are less, but your sergeants appear to be more. And that's what I'm just looking at. That's not even adjusting for retirement or anything. They're significantly more. Now we get to step 6, it kind of with Robertson, because they're doing these 4% bumps, but we're saying Robertson's a real outlier. But I'm saying that if the point's to do equalizing salary, everybody's not going to get a raise. And you know, I'm not pro for everybody, but mine is right now, it looks like they're above market.
Well, and I don't disagree with that premise at all, but how do we make it where they're not gonna get a smaller paycheck next time than they did this time?
Oh, it won't go down. Nobody shrinks.
Okay, okay.
There's no negatives up
Yeah,
there.
there's no
If you're where
negatives.
you're at, the only thing that say we do this and it becomes effective the next regular payroll, November 1. The only thing they're going to see change on their check where it has that ARP, it's going to go into their base.
Right, okay.
Nobody's going.
Nobody's
I would
going
never
down.
recommend that.
Okay.
Even on it, because all you're going to do is cause turnover.
That's right.
And
That's
angst
exactly
an employee
right.
going. If they're way
No.
overpay,
Yeah.
I would
No.
never
Okay.
recommend that. No.
I thought we did that one.
Sorry.
Oh, no,
I thought
I
we
was
did that
confused on that, yeah.
I thought we did that at the beginning the other day, that nobody's losing.
We may have. I've had a week.
No, you need to get that one out, make sure.
No, you need to make sure you understand all this because you.
Yeah,
That everybody needs to make sure they understand everything they're looking at right now.
But
because-
I see what you're saying with the,
But right now, if
115.
we leave this, the 115, because we start higher, or we could use the same as Robertson, but honestly, I'm not wanting to speak ill of Robertson's. It's kind of skewed everybody's now, but if you look, you got 120, 25, 29, 20, but we start with the highest, and what really skewing this up is these two people right here. What? That one and that one's the one we're kind of marketing. We're actually marketed, so, and you're saying Gallatin may, but Gallatin's probably fine on the sergeant. Looks like they're really got a lieutenant issues where it's kind of going into.
yeah. They're
I would recommend doing 2% from a sergeant to a lieutenant.
So-
Just from a realistic.
just to make sure I understand it. We're saying 115 because that's the average of the other steps. How did we come up with the
Well,
100?
because my thought is you've got the highest, now you have the highest patrol officer.
Okay.
That's really skewed up by two people, Robertson and Gallatin. One's 116 and one's 115. So we could use 115 or even the average of those two. I mean, would make sense either one. I mean, it's not going to be perfect, or we could just put AVG of those two over there.
I think
Or should we do the average of Gallatin
Can
and
we,
Robertson since they're skewing this way?
Can we talk
up?
about Hendersonville again? What is their number? I mean, yeah, I don't, it's just, we don't have a lot of data.
We would have to get the break on, the problem we have with Hendersonville, there's a couple of them.
Well, if we got a problem, it's okay.
We couldn't get them.
I'm good with
well,
this.
we couldn't get them to respond to our record request. They basically told us it would be forever. And then we went back and asked them what minimum they didn't respond to us. So we gave up. Eric got the step scale, but we don't know how many hours they work, what they do with it. We don't even have
Okay,
much.
never
So
mind,
we're
Eric.
submitting-
Let's don't throw another.
Their officers may
French
be working 80 or, unless Eric knows all this for sure.
I don't. That's,
I was just saying,
totally immersed in the
And on
sheriff's
average,
office.
I've noticed they're lower than Gallatin, but we can go look at their hourly rate if you want to.
I just, it's
Go
my
back.
continuing wish for more data points.
Go to that far side over here. Beth, I think we still have them. I think it's a head column if you're going over. Just keep going.
But all of
If I
this,
had them over there
when
one
we
time.
come back at
Right.
budget.
Yes.
It's not, I got rid of it because it was,
I'm good with this. The guy's not losing money. 115 seems like a responsible number. It looks like we've considered all the points that we need to consider, and if it needs to be fixed, we can in budget. I think this is.
And like I said, now that I'm more aware of some of our salary issues across the county, I'm leaning more towards like we need to really look at deeper at all
well, what, and
departments.
mine is, do we want to use 115 or the average of the other two? The 115, I just rounded it, plus we were slightly higher than those other two when you take out the rates, so.
What's it look like if we do the average of the other two?
Beth, can you just put equals
We're gonna go-
ABG? Just click on that 115 where we've got, let's see what the percentage looks like first here.
I don't know what your,
Oh, just hit ABG, just hit equal.
Right here?
Yes, I'm sorry, hit equals ABG.
You
Sorry.
can't read his mind?
sometimes.
Hey, it should pop up average. Just
We'll be
keep-
taking that off your job description.
There, click on, well, there, just click on average, there you go. Yeah, there you go. Well, that's good. There you go, now click on Robertson, and then hit plus and hit click on Gallatin, and then just close that parentheses, and see what we got going on there. Won't apparently AVG it that way, put a comma between them, between plus them. See with a comma what it does. Okay, makes about a 1% difference.
And does that show up over on the?
No, we can go ahead and change that formula. Just change the one that's 115, Beth, to 115.97 over here on your sergeants. They can just emphasize what I showed you.
I think leaving it at the 115 was better because Robertson is so overblown. I mean, we're still over Gallatin, and there are,
What, 115, we're under Gallatin, right?
No, on the sergeants, no, we
Yeah.
were so high,
Okay.
sorry.
we're still
okay.
over
Could
them.
go back and make sure I'm not.
And
doing it wrong.
Robertson, we've
Hit the-
seen their
hit the
other
steps.
numbers, they're overshooting,
Yeah,
and they
hit-
filled
hit-
their positions already.
Hit your steps.
Yeah.
Yeah, right now.
I mean-
there are
54
three-
applications in a week. I wish I had
So-
that problem.
Well, maybe you're going to.
I hope so.
What's the recommended
So,
intake? We're looking where we're currently at, 3604. Look and see what it is on the table for step 4, make sure we're looking correct. Step 4 on the table would be 3159. Click back to that comparison. I may have told him wrong because we're looking at the existing. Pull that average there and see where we're at. That's not as high as we thought. Pull that average into there on 4 now. Other
It's
than-
his pulled, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, what is it?
33,
33.
30.
I think Eric, we may want to go up a little bit. Because I was looking at your 3604 where you're currently at, it's
Right.
way above market, but where we're going actually would be a slower earn. May want to go,
Just do 160.
it's the student 16. I mean, copy it across and then see where we're at. We'll see what his number looks like. It makes 3124. What does it look like over there on that comparison sheet? And we're not accounting for those number of hour differences and the retirement, so you actually should be
Right.
around that average. Because you're way, when we look at, we're saying you're below the average, you're actually probably above it. But, what was the matter over there, Anthony? What are we looking at? Who are we, click back to our steps. Robertson's the one that's way over blown, and then Gallatin, we would be below those. Still compared to 84, they're sorry, it's the same way. So what does that make, about a 5% difference? Go click back on that cost base. The thing's gonna throw you off. Robertson's at year 4, they increased and doubled the rate of everybody else on patrol. Go click back over there, Bethany. I'm sorry, I keep telling you which ones. I'm getting myself here.
This is me and my wife.
Table.
This is how conversations go in my house too.
Yeah,
I say
I'm
something,
sorry.
what do you mean?
Can you click on the sheriff's step table? Sorry, before we keep going back. I think we need to go to 116. What are you guys thinking here?
So you said you don't think we need to go to 116?
I think we need to go to 116.
Yeah, I think the 116 is good.
Because right now, even that 4-year guy's making 36 right now, and it's 35 for 10, so, but I think we want to make sure we're at least meeting the average, and the thing, the average is skewed by the number of hours and all that, but let's go back and see what the average, if you don't care, Beth, on that cost sheet one more time. Oh, I'm sorry, I told you on step sheet, I keep saying the same thing again. Include pull without Sumner County if you don't care. There you go. So we're looking at 3276, and what is the amount on step 4 on the table say?
It's,
Slightly below the average, but we got all those things that are skewing it, but do we want to try to get closer to the average even with the skew in there? If that makes sense, we pay the retirement and they work more hours.
yeah,
so.
I think
I mean, that's a big piece, is we pay the retirement.
Right, so it skews.
I mean, that is huge.
it especially once you reach the sergeant level, you're kind of at that maturity point where you care about
You
retirement.
care, well, yeah.
So-
And also, I'd like to ask you, are you giving them a list of their benefits, like a total package number?
We-
Are you giving it to them once a year or
We had
ever?
a one sheet thing that Cheryl developed
No,
when she was here,
no
but
implementation.
It's hard to
well,
follow.
it was hard to follow.
You don't have to
and-
say anymore, I'm there.
So
It was a good effort.
it was. Some of the information was outdated and the links didn't.
Through payroll, can we, I know I'm just adding more work, I continually tell them we need another accountant. Through payroll, can we once a year give every county employee their package number?
One time we had a vendor that offered if we had dropped a data file to them that could do that for us. We'll have to see if I can remember who they are, see if we can do it. Or if our system's capable.
Yeah, is our system
We can
capable?
look and see.
Do we have a?
It'll do a lot of stuff, we just gotta look, see if it can do that. Probably
Because,
can.
I mean, that would have helped.
Well, there's two things, you got health, retirement, life.
Well, one of the big things during open enrollment I asked was to have a TCRS rep here, and she's like, we can't do that. That would have been huge for our employees to be able to say.
Okay, so let me, and this will be something we can talk about next, or after this time period. So I'll have access to those reps next week. And, I can set that up.
Yeah.
Let me know what other counties, I can bring them in.
The thing is, just gotta set up times for them.
Right.
Probably the best would do it during open enrollment.
Open enrollment.
Because we've taken open enrollment back, so that's something we can put in with open enrollment. Ask the TCRS rep to be here when you sign up.
But that's next year, right?
That's a good time to get them together. Otherwise, the thing is, open enrollment, the employees kind of come together once.
Mhm.
The problem you run is like your EMS and sheriff, if you require them to come, you've got to pay them. So EMS
Oh, I wasn't
or
gonna require,
highway.
there's no requirement if they wanna
Okay.
know.
Well, like on highway, for instance, we do all their open enrollments together because we send them over to the highway department like 6 a.m. in the morning.
Right.
They can get them all before they go on the road and spread out, and it saves us.
And we kind of
We
did the same
pick up
thing.
the
with
stragglers.
sheriff's
Toolbox
office.
talk, I
And then
know,
we pick
yeah.
up the stragglers, and it saves a lot because highway lets pull people off the road.
Or if you can bring, I recall back when we did our first SIB meeting almost a year ago, you had questions and Cheryl said, anyways. So if you had questions, we'll work out something
Yeah.
before next year's open enrollment. And we'll see if can you make a note, see if the payroll system will give everybody a full, thank you, sorry for the diversion.
So let's go click, if you don't care, on patrol lieutenant, it has 115, kind of click, and that's what Eric says, and I 100% agree they have to be working on, because there's more than a 2% difference between a sergeant and lieutenant. So, I'm sorry, go back to our table and kind of, go over here to the percentage changes, we got 115, go sideways and look what everybody else is. The only one you've got a significant difference on that one would be Rutherford. The average is 115.12, we have 115. That one, I think, through the sergeants, you probably overcame any skews. I think my thought process is 115 is probably pretty good. Because Gallatin, they're probably going to adjust. Rutherford, I don't know. But I think Rutherford may be a little lower because they have more tiers up to like us, so I don't know. Ours could be slightly even considered high, because if you look at Montgomery, we have one more, they don't have captains in Montgomery that we could determine. So that would skew Montgomery a little bit. Wilson has 111, which is, I'm sorry, which one? 123, which is higher. Honestly, by my feeling, from just looking at the numbers, I think 115 looks good, but what are you folks thinking? What do the lieutenants look like?
I think 115.
Because your lieutenants are pretty, according to this, your lieutenants would be below market quite considerably,
Yeah.
at 115.
And that 115 puts us right at market.
See what like hit our steps, we'll make sure we're working. Find out what the average is, if you don't care, when we have a lieutenant in. Or even year one, we can look, because there's no need to. The average is 35.16, and then go over there in our table and see what we've got. And our table has 34.53. And if you adjust for all those differences, it's probably pretty close.
Yeah.
We can combine work number after number, but
Yeah, I think-
still gonna be, I think that's probably pretty close to market. So then it brings you back down to captains. We have 109. And the average is 111. Same thing, and you have, my only thing about this one, you have Gallatin and Robertson, which is our big riders, both being at 108 there, so 108.49, I think probably we need to lean closer to 108 on that one. But that's just my thought, looking at the changes in those other counties. Because if we're going more toward those two, because that's kind of where we're trying to go, the Robertsons, I think we may be looking more at the 108 mark. And you don't have one. Montgomery shows 116. They'll have the next layer, major. I said captain. I'm sorry, it's major. They don't have. And I know it's not a huge difference, but we have 37, 30. See what the average is on the captain. Beth, if you don't care on the.
Yes, please, that's what I was wondering.
See how close we are on there. Now the captain, we got to remember two things. He's probably exempt everywhere, and ours probably works more hours. So he should be below that average, but probably by at least 5% to make up for that, 5 to 7%, because also the retirement issue on a bunch of them going back. So how close is he to that?
You're leaving Gallatin out of that average?
No, sorry.
Galton's so low, I'm kind of worried we may or two.
Yeah, but you got Wilson so high.
Oh, that's true.
I mean, yeah, let's.
If we go 39.10, what do we have for him? 37 something? And if you take the TCRS and the hours, he's probably pretty close there too. I don't think, my feeling is we probably shouldn't move that one, what we came up with the other day. Because these were, we actually did the markets with all this, I think it's probably pretty close. Unless you see something different too that I'm missing there.
I'm just, not right now. Can we look at it again?
And on those actual comparisons, we can open those up and look where it is.
Can we just look at the captain? Or do you have that? No?
Under, I'm sorry.
Under
under
comparison,
stats.
or,
He's not under, oh, we'll just
isn't
open
he
them
in
up.
comparison?
Yeah,
Or
just
which
open
one
them
is
up.
John?
Just open them up. I don't have him worked up to annual and stuff, so we can work him up if you want to, that's why.
No, I was just like looking. Let me look at mine too, hold on me. Mhm.
Beth, I think you're a saint. I do. I understand the frustration.
Yeah, thank you. And I have a couple of questions
Yeah.
too, other than stuff. Oh, thank you. Is there one captain? Save me from
We have four
four.
captains.
Okay. I thought so, but
2 in the jail.
2 in the jail and 2.
it would have been better for me if my sheet was arranged differently. I have a captain here and a captain over here.
Well, that's because they separate the budget between jail side and certified staff.
So I got a captain SRO, I got a captain
Patrol,
patrol
and 2 captains in the jail.
in the jail.
And
Have you
our
always
captains
had
are
2
together
captains
for
in the jail?
No, we just added,
That's where you
other one
added the
last year.
captain.
But your captains for patrols and jails together.
Yes.
And we don't, other counties were kind of both ways, so we don't know. They were lower on the jail one, so these numbers we're pointing here is your road captain, so
Well, and
probably skewing a little bit up there too.
that's okay, because, you know, a post-certified guy can do jail work, so eventually all captains will be post-certified and can just intermingle. You're over the corrections division, you're over this. It just makes organization
Do me a favor, Brad.
much easier.
Go there, because he would go to year 10 by the most, because everybody's, find out what we have on our table for year 10 captain, and just, let's see what it is. It is, which one am I down? It's 4457. Go back to the comparison sheet and see kind of where we're at in 11 years. 4457. He would be slightly below average looking at him. Even account for that stuff, 44 about. Put 4457 if you don't care, Beth. Put plus 40 and divide it by that 4573. I don't care. As an exempt employee, that's what we're really be comparing. He's about 3% off. Low, but yeah, on average. Even account for those hours for a captain. So if we brought
And is
that
that-
riser up, a 0.5% would probably overcome that, because you know it goes across 2 up 2.
But in that one, we don't have Galton's number. Mostly we're just comparing, mostly what's driving us there is Robertson again.
Which Robertson we think significantly skewed.
Yes, so.
Do you wanna drop Robertson out of the average and see what it looks like, or
I'd like to see it.
just to
Yeah, let's see
see?
it.
Cause I think he will pass it, just, see the 50.
Because I think that big outlier, I mean, it's significantly to compare it. But then there's Wilson.
Just delete that one. Yeah, that right there, just delete
Yeah,
that.
if you look at Wilson, Robertson's really not up.
Yeah, I don't know what's up,
4284.
Huh? No, I mean, just see it right here on Robertson, hit the week. Yeah, there you go. See what it shakes that average to. And what was his average over there on the table?
4457.
So if we don't count Robertson, because they do have 4% going across like nobody else does, then, you know, we would be.
Can you show the captains on the call sheet?
Yes. Yeah, there's some of your big, yeah. That's what I'm saying, you've got them in the jail together, the hour, and
Let's leave them exactly how they are and let's move to the next, I think.
because I think you're right. I think they're hitting market because of all the factors.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Because we think that there's a problem with that one county.
They have a lot of years.
And then, do we have a problem here? What's their longevity here? Look at the number of years. We don't have a bleed here.
The same thing if we want to.
I mean, I want to bring them to market, but our first
Well-
priority is the bleed.
The first priority is the bleed, but you also have to compensate these guys for their level of liability and responsibility.
I agree, and I showed you, I looked at the
Yeah.
number of turnover cost. I'm well aware of this is a extremely high
Yeah.
turnover cost with these guys. But we'll be
No,
readdressing
yeah,
it
I
at
think-
budget.
I think we're right at,
Do
I
they
think we're
earn-
right on the money with
Do we
those.
let those guys earn comp?
No.
Okay, so they basically
I mean, this
are
is a
treated-
significant lift. This is a $11,000 a year
So-
raise.
They're completely exempt, so that number I gave you would be a market to market when we pull out what they're really close to what. The only thing I think that does Montgomery want to not have, they don't have majors. Yeah, so I don't know, a few of them don't have majors, yeah. I think you guys are close to market, but I don't know, it's kind of I'm kind of the thing to, I can see it both ways. I mean, I see what you guys are saying. If the main charge is us to get turnover stopped and hit the bottom, then yeah, we've overshot here. But if their main turnover is to bring the whole department to market, then this would bring us to market.
Yeah, I think that's.
Which what's more within our call? I'm not,
Well, I think if we can accomplish both
I think
of
it was
those-
both, but
Yeah.
I mean,
And I think we are accomplishing both of those with the numbers I'm seeing so far.
that's kind of what I'm leaning, but we're at 3.3, and my concern is there's something, and just like Don Schmidt sent you guys the email, do we want to compensate our night people for more than our day to encourage people to want to work nights? If we do, then we need to pull back some money to figure out how to do that.
And that would come into play if we went back and we looked at.
How much money you guys would need? You guys would determine, say, was it 50 cents an hour? Probably not a lot, but you know.
A shift differential.
Yeah, I've talked with the sheriff pretty at length about shift diff and educational incentives and things that other agencies are doing to compensate their employees. And I think our general consensus is to study that a little more and bring that during budget cycle.
Mm-hmm.
I think,
My concern is if we end up doing $3.4 million out of 3.6, then it leaves no money to do
Right.
that stuff. So
well,
if we could get this down to $3 million, it would leave you 600 for those pre-certifications, the differential and the educational, because I don't know how, because Williamson's doing it for sure. We know they didn't have a salary scale. The other ones we didn't really ask because it was out of time, to be honest.
And as far as studying it, back to what I was asking for, if we did that title and with the differential, we would be able to clearly put that in and look at it, but it's gonna take a bigger time period.
And I don't know, does the captains at other counties require degrees? I don't know. We didn't count, so these may be non-degree versus we may be overshooting it there. I can't say for sure. I can say, I agree that it's a large number. I agree it looks like we're on market, but I'm saying there's maybe factors we don't know, like it may require a degree for captains on the county. I don't know. We didn't ask those questions. It's kind of, I don't know, it's whatever you guys want to move on, or do we want to look at bringing it down to a little bit because of that possibility? I don't know.
Can we look at, like I said, how much is what is the total annual lift on that?
With the ARPA, just with what they would get per employee or all of them.
Captains.
No, he shoots know the cost.
Okay, you're right, so the ARPA's in there too.
Well, now this is
So when I see
this is this brand new cost there.
that's the brand
This is
new.
the brand new cost. This is the ARPA that we're just going to need to
Yeah,
cover.
to
That's your total.
address.
So really, what you're looking at for these folks would be 13,700 each. If you could just pull some on that, but it's right there. So it would cost.
If we pull that down, you have more room to grow.
well, we're gonna have more room to grow anyways, right? Because if we're already including the ARPA in this process that we
Well, it's
were
not in the 13,000.
intending to include next year's process.
They were going to pull out a debt service shield, but that was a big thing to get them to do that
Right.
next year. That was a big concern for employees. That's why I think it's good to do this now too, because your employees are concerned
No,
if that don't happen.
I
So,
agree.
Yeah.
But I mean, my kind of thing is, I don't know if the captains require degrees in these things. I don't know if we're looking at apples to apples. So I can see it both ways, from a truthful, just to be truthful. Plus, my concern is, I can go back at the comparison. And I'm sorry, Beth, I keep telling you, the cost, see where we're at on cost. And I know there's up to 3.6 if it's recurring, but my concern is if, a couple of things. We're just gonna give them a table. There's a push both directions against and for because of the cost for the salary survey. If it's all E, then there's that issue, plus if we're gonna look at educational or shift differential. So say you do come back and look at educational and say it's worth another 10%, and we find out that all captains require that everywhere else, then really we've overshot it. We can't give them 10 on top, that's kind of where I'm at. I don't know which way to look at it.
I mean, to
And-
me,
and-
go ahead, sorry, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
no, go ahead.
To me, that's a secondary goal to getting everything.
Right, and I understand that, but my thing is, let's just say that right now, we take it where we're at on the captains, we're at market, okay? Comes back and we find out, hey, we wanna give everybody for a degree at 10%. We find out that all the captains everywhere else requires, so suddenly we've overshot all our captains 10%.
Mm-hmm.
Because they should all be brought back to 90% because they don't have, I don't know if that's the case. And some of them probably is, probably not, because
Yeah.
we know Williamson gives raises, but they weren't huge.
I think that varies by agency.
Right, but if someone required them, they're skewing the numbers, so I don't know, this may be a little high. I don't know, I can't say for sure.
No, I have a degree, so I say this with a bunch of respect. Sometimes the experience is way more valuable than a piece of paper.
Degree helped me, but I've learned a lot the last 30
That's exactly
years.
right.
If I did the same thing coming out of college right now, I would stroke. I'm telling you, I could go on, but, so since there's two trains of thought and you need three to agree, could we look, go back, because there's still gonna be the comparison again. Is that where we're at? Not the comparison steps. So what do we have in, I'm losing my brain, sorry. The sheriff's table is what we're looking at. We're kicking captains up 9%. if we put 108 and looked at it with everybody, would you guys be okay with looking at it now and see if they could get an agreement between both unions? Because I can see it both ways.
Yeah, well, the average is 111.25, right? And we're at 109.29.
Right,
I say we leave it.
okay. What, Terry? Guys, I can see it both ways. The average could be skewed, I don't know. I can see Terry's concern 108, I can see yours 109. Mine is if we're gonna wanna come back and visit educational, then honestly, I'll tell you I'm at the 108. If we're not, then I'm at the 109. Because I
I
believe
think-
we're compensating fairly. I don't know which one's.
I think at 108, we're giving a lift right now, and we're only 3 months in, but so we got 9 months, and we're gonna look at this again. Can't step back, so that's where I'm at.
Would you be okay with it, the 108?
And then,
It'd still be pretty good for the captains.
so if it was,
Because we probably want to track down the cost, to look at the shift. diff,
right
and that's all
now,
for you.
at the 109, we're looking at a $13,000 lift.
Copy it across, babe.
And-
Let's see what they look like. Let's go look at the cost sheet.
And we're not even,
They're still pretty big. We went to 8. I mean, they're over 10 apiece, 12. The same thing if we determine this model market, because my recommendation is going to be after we do this, if we want to do countywide, we bring in a group to do a survey and we'll finance
what I'm
it. We'll get
leaning-
people to work with them
and-
again and do the same thing.
and I'll be honest, what I see the budget committee leaning towards, because we cannot get, we're gonna be asking in legislation on Monday, we have legislation coming, to ask the state reps to codify this money, because it is not codified as reoccurring. And creating expense on a non-reoccurring revenue stream is just, makes for crazy. We've seen how it's happened for ARPA for the last couple of years. I feel, we've asked, we're going to be asking the legislation to codify so that we can all have a more stable environment financially. I'm gonna be leaning towards recommending a one-time bonus to hold people until we can get an answer. We're gonna be asking them to come and speak. We're gonna be asking the state legislators to come and speak to it and address it and tell us they're gonna make this a constant stream of money for you guys. Because we need to know. I mean, you need the money, we need to know, is the taxpayer gonna pay, or is the state gonna bring it down from their bucket of money? And then we're good, we know where we need to go, we just need to know where that revenue is solid.
Doing a one-time bonus will not help. It won't.
That's when we need the state legislators to step up.
Well, but regardless, right, we're seeing that we are below market.
Oh, yeah.
So regardless of whether the state legislature steps up or not, Sumner County is gonna have to step up and pay our employees a market wage.
And come at budget, we'll be releasing more money. And we already know where we gotta go.
Mine's
But
just,
I'm just saying, that's what I see coming.
well, mine's just right now, personally just trying to determine the market. That's more, a Monday thing. But-
Yeah, we need this
But
market,
right now, my only thing on this
definitely.
one is I can see both points, and the reason being is I don't know what the requirements is for captain to captain. And you guys have mentioned you'd like to do educational and salaries for shift diff. So if we're gonna do that, and they do require educational, and theirs don't, and we're saying it's a 10% for deputies, we probably wouldn't do that all the way up, then we've overshot it. I don't know. That's kind of what I'm looking at. Don't know. But I can go either way, honestly, because I can see merit in both of them based on not having the data. If they're required to agree, I can see they're probably overshot. If they don't, then I see we're under market slightly, about 1%.
But I do want everybody up there. I wish the state had codified this money to start with. I want to fix this. I wish we had that salary survey done 2 years ago when we hired HR.
They did a survey, but they didn't cover all the costs, and what happened was, across the country, everything going on crazy, it's becoming, it's hard to get officers because there's not enough officers now. So everybody's fighting for them, so when that group did their study, it pushed up their data points right after us. So we brought our sheriff's department up closer to market, which we were still like, what happened was the market moved up right after us. So now we're.
And the
way-
market's still growing. We're gonna need to increase these more.
So our study's 2 years old now. And the same thing, if what's gonna have to happen is we're both gonna keep pushing each other up until you make the salary high enough to where it attracts people out of other markets. We're probably getting closer, just like we're saying we need, that's why I'm a big one for pushing the jail up. Your jail looks high.
I like that, yeah.
But if we're all pulling, you're gonna pull it into there. Your jail's not as risky as a patrol officer, but you're still down there with some liability, and you're in a cold, dark jail with a bunch of
people who
individuals
don't wanna
being
be there.
punished for doing things wrong, so they're rude and crude, and you can't do anything about it. I mean, you
right.
basically gotta put up with it. You
I-
can defend yourself, but you can't go over there if they spit on
Oh,
you.
I totally got it.
And, you know, like
I
a bar
stopped
brawl.
my first career because they kept sending me to
So
the
you
jails
may
to
get
audit.
spit on by the
I gotcha.
What can you do? Throw them in solitary, and you may get more time. I guess that would be considered assault, but you know what I'm saying? You kind of have to, and me as an officer, I've not ever had anybody spit on me in my office, so I mean, I can be fair to say that. Well, they not on purpose, maybe talking to me, but
And that's a weekly.
I've never had anybody come up there and threaten me, so, or, you know, try to, any of those things, but that's what's gonna have to happen, because that's what happened to us. We raised it, we had limited funds, we
I
raised
agree.
it partially,
And-
and then the market changed on us, so, and we're 2 years behind the ball now.
I see this going up. I just need to figure out where the revenues, that non-reoccurring revenue source, if we can get closer to,
Personally, when we do I think a way to overcome that, when we do the recommendations, we base, because mine's just to help work numbers with you, is to put on there that this is based on what these are, and that this being a recurring stream, and let you guys sort that part out. I'm just here to kind of help get the
and this is
numbers.
excellent.
So
I'm just
that's
throwing that
kinda
out
where
there,
I'm at
because
on
I
it.
wanna, we definitely need to get here.
And financially, yeah, I agree with you 100%. We don't need to use one time to fund reoccurring, but that's a whole different discussion even on this part now, because the state reps, I've heard they said it's gonna be here, so I don't know.
And we've asked them to just,
And
I'm not talking
every one of them
firsthand,
has
so I
said it's
don't
gonna
know
be
what
recurring.
they.
and that's, and all we've asked them now is we're gonna be asking them to come to the meeting and tell us all. They're gonna,
All I can say is I've seen the appropriation resolution from the state, and it's in the side that's reoccurring, but as I'm saying, like you're saying, it's not set in a state statute where it requires it, but even if you get that level of assurance, state statutes can be changed, or the only way it would be permanently put in is a constitutional amendment. It's still not necessarily permanently very hard to change. Or if they put an MOE requirement, you could change, just like the school MOE, they could even change that through the state. And there's some constitutional provisions about funding schools, but it's done through, it says the state will fund them, but they do it through the schools indirectly.
I've seen the lobbying groups.
Well, technically, your state constitution says the state will fund the schools. They do it through us. I mean, it's a constitutional, what
Yeah.
section is it? I mean, it's,
I don't recall the exact number, but it's.
but it's
looked at
part of
that
your,
recently.
but nothing's going to be set in stone. I mean, it's kind of where I'm at. Even if they codify it, they could change it by the next year. But let's go back to the scale. As I say, I can see merits both directions, so which way do you folks prefer to go? I mean, I could see if we're gonna try to do educational later, we probably need to run with the 8. If we're not, then we need to run with the 9.
It's at the 8 right now, and
Right.
what I just saw on the cost table, I'm comfortable with.
Because my two things is if we're not gonna do educational, probably need the 9. If we're gonna do educational, probably do the 8.
Let's leave it at the 8 and give us room to
And then the same thing,
change.
if you come in and ours don't, then you wouldn't give them, and if you find out one of ours does versus don't, then we try to put the 1% in or something smaller, kind of deal with it over time, at least give him something. So let's go back to captions now. Sorry, Bethany, back to the table, or major, I'm sorry, yeah, the table for major. Major, we have a very small increase to 105, several don't exist, the average is 107, go across and see who's kicking up our average. Yeah, Wilson's your big one on average, everybody else is like 107, 109, they're a little more, but if we go back and look at the cost table first, that's gonna be, he is one of them that, he's considered far out of market, but the same thing, I'm gonna tell you right now, it's a couple of things. We can go back and look at the sheet where it'll just, for, the hours and stuff, but we still don't know about the educational deal between theirs, I don't know. If we're gonna do an educational incentive, I don't know what's required for captains in other counties, as Eric said, it's probably all over the place.
It
Some
is
may
all
require a
over the
degree,
place.
some may not, some may just give you more money if you got a degree, so it may skew these numbers, I don't know.
What's the start pay for a major?
38.70 if you do that times, what's he, 8.45 hours?
He's 8.5.
Yeah, so if you do 8.5 times 260 times that amount, will get what's your average or your annual?
When you go looking to replace that major, how many years of experience are you gonna bring in to replace it?
It'll really depend on where the agency's at, right?
I mean,
You're-
I see he's a 29-year employee.
Yeah.
This is a decision
A
that's
brand new
coming.
one would come
Well,
in at 85.
You're probably looking at a 20 at least.
A 20.
Yeah, that takes a lot of
So it'll max that
institutional
out
knowledge.
every time. But the thing is, if you even brought somebody from the street from another agency, it'd be 85 start.
Which is, we talked about it the other day, I really do think in those appointed positions, we need to set the range and let the sheriff recruit and retain based on their experience, right? Sometimes the best guy for that position is from inside the agency, and then sometimes it's not. So I think he needs that flexibility to say, John Doe is a much better candidate for this position, so he needs to be able to compensate him, especially in these appointed positions.
My thought is you get to see if the sheriff is amicable with the table. After the table does this one-time adjustment, because it's just a table, then it's really up to the sheriff based within his budget constraints.
Right.
And if he don't have enough to get a major, then he needs to come to the commission, or if he's got extra, he takes it and hires what it is and lets it drop out. I mean, that's kind of, it's all tax dollars.
Now,
That's kind of my thought on the whole thing, because, you know, just like this money right here, weird things, you know, sheriff usually could petition you for money, but this has came way after the budget, okay? It's money that's came in, we're off market, so it's kind of a little different situation. But as I'm saying, I just think there needs to be kind of some kind of understanding. There's one, you know what I'm saying, the sheriff and the chief deputy work with these people every day. We're looking at the numbers, but they'll be a little different than what some of these counties necessarily all have. Like you look at Montgomery, don't even have some of the positions, and there's what's same size, they're actually bigger than us.
we were okay with what we decided in major the other day.
Okay.
I sat down with the sheriff.
And then the chief deputy and,
Can we talk about jail administrator first, and then I'll step out while you guys talk about chief deputy?
okay, let's just highlight him in like a bright blue or something, and then we'll all discuss him with him. Because he don't want to get involved,
I don't.
so let's just talk about the jail as a whole and see how we look on your jail and see how you feel about it.
Okay.
The only reason your administrator I've got concern is because of and I think it's fine, but we're just gonna point it out, that way somebody won't think it's an error. I think it's actually, your jail, you're starting your correction officers high, but you're doing a 1% increase versus 2%, so myself, by and large, when I looked at the numbers, I did not see a whole lot in the jail that concerned me, but Eric and you probably need to look at it pretty closely now, since it's in a cost sheet and all prettied up now, and that's what I said, I can step out where you guys look at it a while, and maybe one of the risers between the sergeants, let's look at those risers, I had a little bit of question about its percent. Going across. By and large, I really wasn't much concerned about your jail. And the reason I'm not is because you got two things. If you're gonna get people in the jail, you're gonna have a better start salary and somewhere to go to.
I think we did really good work on the jail the other day.
I
did.
agree.
But I've looked at the numbers a lot more, and maybe you two can go look at the cost and the percentages, and I'll just take a bathroom break for a few minutes. I think you guys need to look at it. I've looked at
Okay.
those numbers a lot more to make sure you don't see any issues
I
that
need
you've
to take a
got
bathroom
with
break
it.
as well.
And then the only thing when you look between the captain and the administrator.
I would like to look, but I'm gonna go to the washroom first. Thank you for,
I'm gonna go ahead and stop this since we're taking a break. So we're all gonna be out. So what do you want to say?
so.
9:30, come back? It's 9:20?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.